Hi everyone, welcome to our October 2025 workshop. Thank you so much for attending these workshops. We always love seeing your participation. These workshops are hosted every third Friday of the month at 1 p.m. on Zoom, and they're hosted by the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council for the 40 plus Firewise communities in the county. When I first started this role, there was only 2 communities in the county, and now there's 40, so it's a really great growing network. These are meant to teach you about wildfire knowledge every month or about Firewise USA. Sometimes we do networking events for these workshops where you can connect with other Firewise communities. My name is Natasha Saxena, and as an introduction, I've worked with the Fire Safe Council for over 3 years now, and I'm the Regional Firewise Coordinator. So I help a lot of folks with their applications to become Firewise communities. A couple of ground rules for the workshop. You can always drop questions in the chat. We always encourage you dropping questions in the chat throughout. They're the first questions we get to during our Q&A. And then if you could kindly mute yourself during the presentation, that'd be great. Then we'll have space for the Q&A at the end. These workshops are being recorded and are available on our YouTube afterwards. So if you would not like to be recorded, you can turn off your camera, but otherwise I'd love to see your faces. And then during our Q&A, depending on how many people we have, we'll either use the raise your hand feature, but if there's not that many people, we'll just allow you to unmute your mics. Just remember to always allow space for everyone to speak and then be respectful. Our agenda for today, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about the Firewise USA program, some funding opportunities, and then an upcoming event. And then we have an amazing guest presentation from Ian Pritchard with the Calleguas Municipal Water District. You might recognize his name because he joined us earlier this year at our Lunch and Learn in-person event for Firewise, and he just did such a fantastic presentation. I'm so glad that he can join us today to show it, and so we can have it on our YouTube so you can always scroll back and learn more from the presentation. Then right after following Ian's presentation, we'll go for a Q&A. If you're wondering where to watch these workshops on YouTube from the past or this one later, you can visit venturafiresafe.org/FirewiseUSA. You'll see that there's the monthly Firewise workshops tab, and you can watch past workshops on YouTube on the right button, and then you can also join a workshop on Zoom with the left button. And then if you're new to Firewise USA, we have a Firewise in 5 minutes video. This is a little outdated on our website. And it's just a really quick and easy video introduction to Firewise. I really recommend sharing it with those neighbors of yours that are joining you in the effort. It'll talk to you about the benefits of Firewise, a little bit about insurance, the relationship with insurance for Firewise, and then an introduction to what it all is and how to apply for it. And then upcoming event is November 6th is our end of year event. These events are really fun for me, and I think all of our staff, because we get to meet members of the community. This year, we're going to have goats. So I think it's going to be really fun because of the goats. And then we're also going to have firefighters present, and we're going to have refreshments and food. We'll have a short little video, and you'll get to mingle with all of the 40 other communities that might be in attendance that night as well. And then funding applications. So if you are one of the 40 recognized communities in the county, you are eligible for $1,000 to $2,000 from our Fire Safe Council. The deadline to apply is October 19th, which is this Sunday. So if you haven't heard about this yet, you can get in touch with me. But every resident leader has been emailed for how to apply for this. And if you haven't heard of it, you can reach out to me, or you can also reach out to your resident leader who most likely has an email for it already. What you can do with this funding varies from gutter cleaning or cleaning your roof. It could be yard signs to promote fire education in your community, or A-frame signs. Some people remove trees or trim trees. It's really up to the resident leader and what's in their 3-year action plan. And then a couple of updates. So I offer one-on-one chats and something called wrap workshops, which is where I walk you through the risk assessment and action plan for the Firewise application. These workshops will close November 14th to the end of the year. So I'd recommend you schedule your meeting sooner or email if you have any questions. From November 14th to the first week of December, I'll be out of office. My sister's getting married in India. So I'm just traveling there really quickly. And then, thank you. And then in December, I'm just going to be taking some time to internally update our systems so they better meet everyone's needs. But you're always welcome to email me during that. But our monthly workshops will continue every third Friday of the month, so you can always ask questions on those. And then without further ado, we have Ian Pritchard, who was born and raised in Ventura, so there's no one better to give this presentation. So Ian, if you would unmute your mic and share your screen, you can go ahead and deliver the presentation. And then just to let you know, Ian also has a video. So we'll pause a bit in the middle of that video just to make sure everybody can hear the video. But take it away, Ian.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Natasha. I'm super happy to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me back. Like Natasha said, I was born and raised in Ventura. My folks still live at the top of Victoria in the house I grew up in. I see there's a Ondalando Firewise here, and I grew up going to that pool. And a buddy of mine was helped put it back together after the fire. So this is my community. I now live in the San Fernando Valley, and I work at Calleguas Municipal Water District, which is on Olson Road, kind of at the top of the hill by the sheriff's station, where Olson Road and the 23 come together. I've been there for a couple years. Before that, I was at Camarillo Water District, which is down the hill in the Santa Rosa Valley. So I've been in water for about 15 years, and we've had, as you all know, in that 15 years, a few different fires. And we had some impacts to the Calleguas service area for the mountain fire in November that I'm going to get into. And as Natasha said, I've got a little presentation, but we are going to start with a video that we actually Ventura County Special Districts Association put together about Calleguas's response to the mountain fire in November. So I'm gonna start with that and then go from there. So like Natasha said, I'm gonna start the video, pause, and make sure that everyone can hear and see it. It really was an all hands on deck experience.
We had hurricane force winds.
This is really an unprecedented event for us. Hey,
Okay.
Sounds good to me, Ian. Everybody else, is it thumbs up? Yep. Okay, great. You can go
All right.
ahead and play the video then.
We keep going.
Calleguas
Okay.
Municipal Water District delivers wholesale water to 19 retail purveyors. We provide water to about 650,000 residents in southeastern Ventura County, including special districts, cities, investor-owned utilities, and mutual water companies. Mountain fire started at about 9 a.m. on November 6, 2024 in the Somas area, and it exploded. It reached 1,000 acres within a few minutes, up to several thousand acres by the end of the day.
We heard that embers were flying multiple miles. The fire was jumping freeways. Houses in our service area were on fire.
So during the mountain fire, several of our smaller water purveyors were impacted, both by the emergency and by the media storm that was happening with that false narrative of hydrants running dry. They're out of water. So this is Ventura County Fire Station, and the fire hydrant is dry. It was pretty immediate that information was coming out that we clearly needed to correct.
These events are very scary, and people don't know what to do, and they will latch on to any story that they hear as an answer for why what is happening is happening.
Right when the misinformation started, we grabbed an iPhone.
Our senior communications specialist came into my office, spur of the moment, and just said, can you talk for 60 to 90 seconds about how hydrants work?
Explaining that they weren't running out of water and that firefighters account for that situation.
You have pressure drops and you have flow drops. Firefighters know this, they anticipate this, and what they do is they change their operation.
It's so important to tackle misinformation head on immediately before it can snowball into something much larger. We used every available platform that we had to get that information out to the public. This included social media, direct conversations, phone calls, emails, whatever it took. We really work together as a team.
We had a number of text threads going on, and we stayed in constant communication with one another. And we spent a lot of time making sure we were checking our information with each other and who was going to say what. We had a presence at the Ventura County Fairgrounds, which is where the fire set up their HQ. We approached and/or were approached by journalists from local media. And once a couple local media folks got our story out, it got picked up by LA. So we really looked at media as an opportunity to get our story out and to get the messaging out rather than an oppositional situation. We were also really lucky because we were in such close alignment with the fire department. So it was really important, both from a staff level and to our elected officials, to be available for the briefings and the community events that follow, just to counteract the immediate misperceptions and misinformation that was out. But generally, kind of more globally, to assure people that water systems were in place and water quality was trustworthy, and that the public systems that support these communities know what they're doing. And this is something that we do, something we plan for, and that we are here to serve the folks that are responding to take care of people in an emergency.
Okay. So that just gives you a little bit of overview of how we responded during the mountain fire. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about the Firewise communities and the Firewise programs is that you all are doing the work ahead of time so that when these fires occur, because where we live, the weather that we're seeing, the changes that we're seeing in the types of wind-driven events, it's not a matter of whether we're going to have another fire in the area. I mean, it is a chance of where it's going to hit, but it is going to happen. So it's wonderful that you all are here preparing for that. And that was part of the reason that I wanted to come, and I'm happy to come and talk about in a little bit more detail in this presentation how the fire hydrant systems work, so that you all who are, and several of you I know from the Firewise communities that you're in, live in hilly areas and live in places where there are multiple pressure zones and there are fire hydrants, and fire departments, firefighters that are going to come respond to fires in your community are going to have to deal with those elevation changes. So I'm just going to go through a little presentation, talk a little bit. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Talk a little bit more about Calleguas, not too much more, because it was actually a pretty good introduction to the district, and then go through a little bit more hydrant stuff, and then I'll be available to answer any questions. I've already seen a couple popping up in the chat. So I'm the deputy general manager at Calleguas, and as I said, I've been here for about 2.5 years, and I was at a water district for about 12 before that. I mentioned in the video that Calleguas is a wholesaler, and we provide water to what we call purveyors. So those are retail water agencies. As you can see from the map, we're really in the southeast portion of the district. So the people that we sell water to include the city of Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, Moore Park, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, and then a number of special districts, which would be things like Camarosa Water District, investor-owned utilities, which if you're in Thousand Oaks or Simi Valley, those would be Cal American, Cal Water, Golden State, and then mutual water companies, which is like Crestview, which was one of the ones that was impacted in the mountain fire in the Spanish Hills area, Pleasant Valley County, or Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company, which is in the Camarillo Heights. So we have a big range of purveyors that we sell water to. But altogether, this area of the county, as you all know, is a pretty populous area. There's about 650,000 people in our service area that get water whole or in part from Calleguas. That's about 3/4 of the county's population. And for us, Calleguas gets 100% of its water. So the water that we deliver comes from Metropolitan Water District. Metropolitan Water District is a huge wholesaler that covers 26 what they call member agencies, but it's from Ventura County, we're the northernmost, out to Riverside County, down to the Mexican border in San Diego. There's about 19 million of the state's 39 to 40 million people that live in the metropolitan service area. So they get water from the State Water Project, which is Northern Sierra snowmelt that goes down through the Delta, and also the Colorado River Aqueduct. So we are kind of in the middle of the supply chain of the statewide, actually west of the Rockies, water supply chain. We are a special district. We're a public agency. We're governed by a 5-member elected board. So if you live in these areas and way down ballot, there is a Calleguas every 4 years in your area. There's a Calleguas Municipal Water District Board of Directors seat that you have the opportunity to vote for. So one of the things that contributes to the discussion that we're going to have is that we're an urban water provider. So a urban water supplier. So what that means is that the folks that we provide water to are in urban, classified as urban setting, but as you all know, in suburban communities, mostly in Ventura County. And the picture in front of you is looking kind of southwest down the Santa Rosa Valley. That tank on the hill is where we keep reserves of water that are really designed to meet daily flows. So the spike of water in the morning when everyone's showering before they go off to work, and then the spike in the evening when everyone's showering coming home from work and their kids are showering and they're running the dishwasher and cooking dinner. As you can imagine, if that hillside were on fire, that tiny tank is most of the water that's available. So these systems that Calleguas provides water to the cities and special districts to operate aren't meant to fight wildfires. This Tom Magic that has this quote from the Los Angeles Times, he's from a small water company in the Altadena area. And what he said was that to fight a wildfire, you'd have to have Lake Havasu behind you. The idea being that the amount of fire that happens in a wildfire is beyond the ability of a municipal or suburban or urban water supplier to handle. That being said, Calleguas does what we can in our power to support wildfire fighting efforts or firefighting efforts, excuse me. That includes the Lake Bard, which is a 10,000 acre-foot reservoir that Calleguas has behind our headquarters, right up there on Olson Road. If you've ever hiked in Wildwood or the Wood Ranch area, you may look down on it. You can see parts of it from the Reagan Library. But it is a small lake that a lot of folks growing up or around in the area don't necessarily know is there. But the fire department knows it's there, and the fire department sends helicopters whenever there's a fire in the flight vicinity of the lake. They use our lake to snorkel up water into the helicopters that they can go dump. We've had up to 5, 6, 7 helicopters moving in and out of the lake to other areas. We are also in the process of building what they call a helipod, which is just a small reservoir. It's like a tank that sits on the top of a hill and fills up really by like basically a float that's in the back of your toilet. Same thing, just on a kind of bigger scale. And whenever a helicopter can go and same thing, can snorkel down into it, empty the tank. And once it gets down to a certain level, the tank refills, so it's always full and ready for the next helicopter. We have one of those on site at our well field outside of Somas, basically on Grimes Canyon, that should be operational early next year. And then Calleguas is also invested in significant backup power over the years. As you all know, also public safety power shutoffs from Southern California Edison impact our power supply, especially these days. Ever since really the Woolsey fire, Edison shuts off the power at the first breath of wind. And as a water agency, we can't afford to be out of power. So everywhere that we need to move water, we have backup power. The picture on the bottom right of your screen is at our well field. We have a large well field right off of Grimes Canyon in the Moore Park area, that has 18 wells that can inject and extract water. And we keep about 20,000 acre feet. So if the lake on the top of the hill is about 10,000 acre feet, we keep twice as much water underground, in the Moore Park area. And if there's no power, we need power to pull it out. So these are 5 2-megawatt generators. When this building was permitted, almost 10 years ago at this point, 2018, I think is when it got its permit. This was the largest backup power generation facility in the county. So I don't know if that's still true today, but it just gives you a sense of the scale. In the wake of the mountain fire, Calleguas staff went out and helped various communities, including Crestview. As you know, it talked a little bit in the video about wanting to spread the message that water was safe to drink. And that's a little complicated by the Crestview situation when houses have completely burned down and the pressure drops in a neighborhood, and it can suck some of that ash and soot and melted plastic and other materials that have been burned in the fire back into the water system. And it's very localized. It can be on a neighborhood by neighborhood or even street by street level. Some areas of some purveyors, some water suppliers, was deemed unsafe to drink. And so after the fire had passed through, Crestview, in particular, in this case, Crestview Mutual Water Company needed support flushing their system, so we could fill it back up with clean water and demonstrate to the state that it was clean before we turned the pressure back on. So we donated staff to help with that effort. In the meantime, we set up a filling station, which allowed folks who were in neighborhoods that didn't get burned but were impacted by the shutoff because of the fire that went through the neighborhood, could come fill up whatever containers they had for themselves and their animals, pets and livestock that they have at their homes in that neighborhood. And then in the wake of the Altadena fire, we sent out support to some of the small districts that were trying to get back on their feet. You can see behind these two gentlemen, these are Calleguas employees on the right third of your screen. Behind them is a drinking water reservoir that had been covered by a wooden roof. And when the fire went through Altadena and burned that up, they needed a lot of help to help clean out. So our folks went out just to help with that effort. And my point here, as much as I like to brag about my staff being helpful, it's also that we in the water community communicate all the time, and it really is like a mutual benefit, a mutual aid type of feeling amongst the water agencies that really do what we can to help each other out in these type of situations. In addition to the work that Natasha and the Firewise communities put on, Calleguas has joined with the UC Master Gardner program to put on these virtual workshops that are available to you if you're considering, how do I change the landscaping around my house to be a little bit more fire retardant or fire resistant. You can join these. They're free to join. They're about an hour. They're the last Tuesday of the month, and there's one left. There's one left this year on the 28th. You can register through our website at calleguas.com and just go to the events calendar. They've been really well attended. I think people are finding them useful. We do quite a bit with the UC Master Gardener program, and if you don't know them, they really are a wonderful group of people. They're very informative, very helpful, and check this out if you have time on the last Tuesday of the month and you're thinking about changing out your landscaping. Okay, I can gonna pause there, I think, for a second, just to see if there's any questions about Calleguas background before I get into a little bit more detail about the hydrants. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
Continue on. Yeah, that sounds good. And I don't see anything in the chat, so I'll let you know if there's ever any questions in the chat as well.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna walk through quickly. This is at some point going to be an animation, but it has not quite gotten there yet. So you are getting the semi-animated storyboard form. Really, it's kind of a primer about municipal or urban water systems and wildfire in these communities. So for anyone that grew up in the Midwest or other parts of the country where it's a little bit flatter, you may be more familiar with water towers, right? Every town's got a tower. You need that tower. You pump water uphill into that tower, and the tower, the elevation creates the pressure that you need for water to come out of your taps, into your toilets, out of your showers, out of your sprinklers, and out of the fire hydrants. But if you live in SoCal, if you live in Ventura County in particular, we put these towers on hillsides and call them storage tanks or storage reservoirs. But it's the same property. We pump water uphill slowly and it drains out, creates pressure to drain out into the houses whenever it's needed. So these tanks are sized for what we call normal operation. So cooking, cleaning, filling your pool, watering your lawn. We think of them a little bit like a layer cake. But the idea is that there's enough water for all the houses and hydrants and businesses and lawns and parks and schools, etc., in that what we call the zone, in that zone of your community, that tank was sized for. The anticipated demands throughout the morning, throughout the day, this tank cycles, so it drops a little, and then over the course of the day when people are using less, it fills back up. It's used again at night and then fills back up, or in the evening and fills back up overnight. So it returns to normal every day. These tanks are also sized for what we call fire flow, or the amount of water that's needed to fight a fire in the largest structure in the area. So municipal systems are really sized to fight structure fires. Again, like I said, they're like a layer cake. So there's the daily operation that I was describing that cycles from morning to evening. There's emergency response. There's a layer for emergencies in there. And then for fire flow. And the fire flow is the amount that, again, that is dedicated. So we Calleguas and the retailers that provide water to you, the best practices, the way that really these tanks are sized and intended to be operated is to never eat into that fire flow. So even at the peak demand at the end of the morning when the people are taking their last shower and water meters have been screaming all morning, you're still supposed to have that amount of fire flow in the tank so that if something happens, there's still water for the fire department to pull off of. So the largest structure fire in a zone is really intended or can be anticipated to require, one, a couple, three, up to 5 fire engines. And that's going to take a certain amount of water out of the tank, but it's not going to empty the tank. And once the fire is put out and the firefighters roll up their hoses and go on their way, the tank again returns to normal height after the fire. But this is not the case when not just your house is on, hopefully not your house ever, but not just when a single house or a single structure is on fire, but when the entire neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhood is on fire and you have walls of flame coming down the hills into these neighborhoods. Because during wildfires, as we experienced in the mountain fire most recently, there can be dozens, if not hundreds of fire trucks that are hooked up to the same system that was really sized for a single structure fire. And that can empty the tank very quickly. And what that does is it reduces pressures and flows throughout the system, impacting the ability for firefighters to pull water off of hydrants. As I said earlier, the way that we get water into tanks is to pump it, and we call those things pump stations. They operate off of electricity. So if you lose electricity at the pump station because of a power outage or because the pump station itself is impacted by fire, and that happened in the mountain fire as well, both of those things, you lose the ability to pump water into the tank, and then again, the hydrants are also affected. If it's a power failure, a Edison public safety power shutoff, or some other reason that the power is not on at that pump station, having electrical generators, whether it's one that's in place, like the ones that I showed you on the slide, or you have portable generators that you can move into position and hook up. If you get the power back onto that pump station, then you can get back in business, and firefighters can use the hydrants that are in that neighborhood. If not, firefighters do anticipate this. Those that fight fires in hills, when there's what we call pressure zones, you need about 100 to 150 feet, every 150 feet or so up a hill, sometimes up to 300, depending on how many houses are in the area. You need another tank. So you pump up a little bit, pump up a little more, pump up a little more. And that's just because water is so heavy that if you put a tank on 1,000 feet up, by the time the water got to the bottom of that 1,000-foot pressure zone, it would blow your sprinklers out of the ground, and it would blow the shower heads off of your shower. Firefighters in these areas know that this can be an issue. If they're putting 100 fire trucks in a zone to try to fend off wildfire, they know that they're going to suck the water out of a tank. And once that happens, they have what they call water tenders, which are large tanker trucks with reservoirs that they fill up at lower zones that have not been impacted by pressure and flow drops, move those tanks uphill, and attach the fire trucks to the water tenders instead of the hydrants, and continue fighting the fires. And the same with the pump station. So if the pump station is the reason, if their pump station has burned, or there's not backup power for that pump station, firefighters can do the same thing. They can go down to lower elevations. And this is what they were doing in the mountain fire, is that the highest parts of the Camarillo Heights and Spanish Hills, where systems had burned and houses had burned and hydrants were no longer receiving pressure from the tanks on the hill, firefighters went downhill a zone, a couple 100 feet downhill, filled up their water tenders, and moved back uphill. So that is the general idea of how water and fire departments, firefighters, work together in these communities, at least in the Calleguas service area. And if there are questions, I'm really happy. Again, Natasha, thank you for the opportunity to come share a little bit with you all. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you all have.
Thank you, Ian. That was such a great presentation. I liked your all the pictures that flowed really, really well. I thought that was a good update to the presentation. And I always like that helicopter picture that you have. It's such a good picture. I'd love for everybody in the chat, if you can, to drop questions, and also maybe something you learned about Ian's presentation together, just to get your gears turning. And then I have a question for you, Ian, but first I want to let space for anybody else to, I think we can actually unmute. We have a pretty small group today, so you can unmute and ask a question to Ian if you'd like.
Yeah, I've got one that came in private in the private chat, which was just a question about living close to an arundo and a bank of arundo. And the question is whether there's sufficient water to put out a fire in arundo. And it's not going to be a satisfying answer, but it just really depends. Depends on where that arundo is. And it depends on how much water is in the creek. I assume that it's an arundo stand coming out of a creek bed. but I think I think that the point that I would make is that firefighters have at their disposal sufficient water. The question is really, Arundo likes to grow in these small streams, right? And in these arroyos, and it depends on how accessible it is, either to firefighters on foot, firefighters with trucks, to helicopters. Um, but I hope that the takeaway from Calleguas's presentation to you all today is that we have water resources available, and firefighters do the best that they can with those water resources, whatever the eventuality is.
Good message. Um, I'll ask my question, then I'll do the 10-second rule, which I heard that people take like 10 seconds before they ask another question. So my question is, so a lot of the residents that I work with and the people that are here are all really passionate and ready to make a change in their neighborhoods. Everyone that goes through the Firewise process fills out a 3-year action plan. And in that, they have an emergency preparedness and a wildfire preparedness section where they add action items that they'll do in their community. So, given this, what could resident and you don't have to have an answer, but what could residents do to support water security in their areas, as an individual resident or as a community?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that may kind of play nicely or layer nicely with, especially Natasha, the rebates that you talked about a little bit earlier is the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, so that wholesaler that we buy water from, they offer a number of water use efficiency programs, conservation programs, and one of which is called the Turf Transformation Program. And you can go to bewaterwise.com and you can apply to, if you have turf, so if you have a grass lawn in the front or the back or the parkway, even between the sidewalk and the street, and you want to take that out, Metropolitan Water District through Calleguas will provide a rebate for doing that. So there's a process. We have to take pictures beforehand. So you want to make sure that you apply, take your pictures, get your application in before you take all your grass out. But it's based on a square footage. So if you take grass out and replace it with native landscaping, a lot of which is Firewise landscaping as well, then you can get rebates to help defray the cost of doing that. So I think that, and the advantage to the water side is that that's just less water that we have to make sure that we have available all the time. So it helps us in our general water use efficiency efforts, but it also can pair nicely with preparing your lawn to be a little bit, or your yard, I should say, to be a little bit more fire retardant.
That's a great one. I think the cross between WaterWise and Firewise can be really like tricky to get right, but it can go hand in hand so well. Thank you for dropping that link in the chat too. And then Maria, I see you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wonder if Calleguas has had any homeowners here that have tried to xeriscape or re-landscape have to go through a very arduous process with our homeowners. And I wonder if you have any advice besides,
with
I
the
mean, we're
HOA?
not going to rip out our lawn and then take a picture and then get an estimate on what it's going to save us. It's kind of the steps are all intermingled, and
Yeah.
homeowners has a lot of requirements for us to present what we want to do, and several people have been turned down.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm sorry to hear that. I know that HOAs can be really difficult to work with. When I was at Camarosa, so Camarosa Water District is the Mission Oaks portion of Camarillo in the Santa Rosa Valley. I worked closely with some of our residents, our customers in those communities that had HOAs to get their turf transformations through. But the other thing I learned, and I know this is not a satisfying answer either, is that it's really a case by case with the HOA. It depends on how difficult, for lack of a better word, the HOA wants to be about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
we've
I'm
had
sorry I
people
don't have
turned
a
down
magic.
for pretty minor
Yeah.
things, you
Yeah,
would
no, I
think.
know it can be
Yeah,
tough. Yeah. I know
yeah,
especially during the drought, there's quite a bit of talk, and even amongst local legislatures and elected officials about the limits of an HOA's ability to control what landscaping looked like. But that had been, that was during an emergency. And so
right.
now that those drought emergencies have been lifted, I know the HOAs are back to feeling like they have more control over people's yards. But again, I think it's also going to depend on, whether you're in the county or whether you're in a city and what those specific rules are. And so I hear you. It's a labyrinth
We're
to navigate.
right on the border between Ventura and LA. And I will say that some communities north of us, I see some really nice areas.
Hmm.
So those homeowners need to get together with that association needs to get together with ours,
Yeah, it sounds
probably.
like it. Yeah.
That makes sense. And then another question that I get pretty frequently is, do pools have, like, if somebody has a pool in their backyard, do they have any role to play in the wildfire preparation or wildfire scene when there is a wildfire disaster happening?
The-
I get that a lot, like, oh, should we create a map with all the pools in the neighborhood and give that to the firefighters or whatnot? Does that, have you heard, do you know any good question, any answer to that type of question?
I do not. I mean, I really think part of your question would be my answer is whether that'd be useful to the firefighters, right? Whether those types of maps would be something that they would use, or if that's more something that they're kind of happy to stumble across. Um, I know that there are people who are selling submersible pumps for people to put in their pools that they can, if they're going to stay and fight their own fires. Um, I mean, putting water on a fire is going to have more effect than not doing that, but I'm also not going to recommend that people stay behind and fight a house fire just because they have a pool. So, I think that again, to me, that's a really an individual choice about what level of risk you want to take. And, I know there's all manner of sprinklers that you can set up, whether they're connected to the municipal system that feeds your house or whether they're connected to your own pool pump system. But yeah, I think that's really an individual risk decision.
Yep, I agree. And then just to reiterate to everybody, you probably hear this every single time we have one of these workshops, but everything like pool pump sprinklers is always in addition to any home hardening and defensible space, because home hardening and defensible space has the most science backed behind it. So you'll always want to make sure those are where you're putting your money and effort towards first, and then explore other options. We don't discourage you to explore other options, but I can always share papers on sprinklers from like leading organizations like IBHS who've done research on it. But it's always good to do home hardening and defensible space first before you do any other additional work.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, and then William, go ahead.
Uh, oh,
We can hear you.
I'm unmuted now. Okay, just working on that. I'm at a hotel, believe it or not, in Huntington Beach. So my question is, Steve Bennett, Assembly member, is working on a new bill relative to water companies, water purveyors, and how is that going to affect the water industry in the future if this bill passes? And it has certain qualifications. I think it's I can't remember the Assembly bill number, but it's three numerics, like 637 or something like that. I don't have my notes in front of me. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, AB 367. It got signed into law on Tuesday, actually. So it is law on Tuesday, and it is. Yeah, thanks for the question, William. There was a lot of discussion about this in the water community in Ventura County this year. So it's a bill it's law now that is specifically targeted at Ventura County. So water suppliers in Ventura County are required to have, I mean, a number of things, but the big things are backup power on all of their pump stations, that do not have another source of water to feed that zone. Um, and there's a number of other qualifications, but that's really the big one, is the requirement for backup power. And the broad, so I'll start off by saying that Calleguas, it didn't apply to Calleguas. It was only retail water agencies. It didn't apply to wholesale water agencies, which again is what Calleguas is. But if it had, we would have met the criteria already because we have backup power on all of our pump stations. So Calleguas, we worked really closely with Assemblyman Bennett and his office throughout the process, especially our manager of external affairs, um, on behalf of a lot of our purveyors, like the City of Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley, etc. Some of whom were adamantly opposed to it, and there are others, like the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, who were very supportive of the bill. So the Thousand Oaks and some of the others who were opposed to it, at least in the early stages, it was really, they were framing their opposition as this being really the Southern California Edison shedding risk that now water companies were going to be forced to take on, right? So what I mean by that is that with as soon as the wind blows, and if these are wind-driven events, Southern California Edison de-energizes their lines, and so they can't be held liable for additional fires, right? The fires that start by wind-driven events. And if there's no power, but now water companies are being required to still provide water for firefighting efforts, and then a lot of folks in the water industry felt like that was shifting liability. There was a big push to tie the requirements in the Bennett bill to funding, and that didn't quite materialize. Assemblyman Bennett said, well, we're going to push to get funding out of Proposition 4. Everyone in the state is pushing to get money out of Proposition 4. So there were some concessions made on both sides, and I think the City of Thousand Oaks ended up withdrawing its opposition. It's going to be interesting next year to see whether this turns into like a statewide bill rather than being focused just on Ventura County. That was a long-winded answer to your question, and I think that the short answer to your question is that if water systems are required to buy backup generation that they didn't have before, the effect is going to be that water is going to be a little bit more expensive because they're going to have to pay for that backup generation somehow. To me, these are the
answer. Thank you.
Okay, great. These are the kinds of questions that I think we should be having in the public square, right? That is part of the legislative process, because it's really how much risk do we want to take on? How much are we willing to pay for? Who has to pay for that risk mitigation? So it was an interesting process, and we're certainly not going to be the last, right? I mean, I think this bill is going to go statewide next year, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more coming out of the Palisades and Eaton fires as well.
Thank you. Susan asks in the chat, what is Prop 4? Do you think you can answer that as well?
Yes, so Proposition 4 was a bond that passed. Oh, geez, I don't know. I saw Nancy; she can probably help me. I don't remember what year it passed, but it was a climate adaptation funding package. So it was and I don't remember how many billions of dollars it was off the top of my head either. But it's one of these bond packages. So the state is in the process of divvying up that money. How much is going to go to water supply? How much is going to go to recycled water projects? How much is going to go to fire mitigation? So that's what Proposition 4 was. And then,
Gotcha.
yes, the AB 367, the Bennett bill, is the one that William and I were just talking about.
Awesome. Okay. Any other questions for Ian? And thank you
Yeah.
everybody for your participation. These are awesome. Oh yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Robert Hartman. I'm in by phone. I have a sort of a specific question, but I think it applies to everybody, and that is, I live next to the Conejo Creek, and there's a big stand of Arindo in that creek. And what I'm wondering is, has the fire department, and in conjunction with you guys, come up with contingency plans specifically to fight fires in that patch of Arundel and possibly in any of the other patches of Arundel in the county? And have they practiced any drills to specifically fight wildfires in large stands in the creek beds?
So when I was at Camarillo Water District, which is in the vicinity of the Conejo Creek, so I have an idea of what stands of Arundel you may be talking about. We did not have any direct conversation with the fire department about fighting that. My experience with the Arundel is looking into removing it from a water supply perspective, and is a nightmare. I mean, removing a Arundel and keeping it removed is very difficult and probably doesn't pay off from a water supply standpoint. I don't know whether it pays off from a fire mitigation standpoint. So I'm unfortunately I can't answer your question because I did not have any of those conversations with the fire department when I was at Camarillo, and I don't know of any
Okay, that's
efforts.
not actually the question I asked. The question I asked was, are there contingency plans? Let's say they never remove it. Are there contingency plans specifically in place to fight those fires? Have you folks thought about how much water it's going to take to put out a fire in that particular stand or in any of the other stands, and how many trucks it's going to take, and then whether or not you're going to need water tenders or other ancillary resources to get a fire knocked down if it comes through there? What is the plan for putting down a fire in an existing Arundel stand without whether it's been removed or not? Is there one?
Not to my knowledge, but I am not at the fire department.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a
All right,
better question
thank you.
for the fire department as well. But yeah, Arundel does run in a lot of areas. That might be something for VCFD if you can get in contact with them. They're fhrp@ventura.org. That would be the contact for
Are
you
there
to
any
reach.
representatives from the fire department here today?
No, not in the audience today that I know of. But William's raising his
Okay,
hand.
thank you.
So if you have anything to add to the conversation, you're welcome to join.
Yeah, I was trying to do this on the chat. It's easier to just say it. During my fire service career in Ventura County, we had many, many, many river fires. Ventura River, Santa Clara, not the creek you're speaking of, but routinely we were out there with engines, type 3 engines, type 1 engines, dozers. Hand crews are essential to cut line around that fire to contain it, as well as helicopters. And it's pretty hard to watch a very expensive helicopter making drops on Arundel, but they have never really had issues with containing the Arundel fires, except during an extreme wind event. And a good example was, forget the name of I think it was auto fire this year in the Santa Clara River that almost hit the Victoria overpass. I will say that we've had eradication programs in the past in the Ventura River because I was in charge of one of those programs, and they have a very short window between eradication and nesting. And Arundel is pervasive and it grows very aggressively and really difficult to manage. So they manage the incidents, managing the Arundel, extremely difficult with also the environmental concerns.
Thank you,
Yeah,
William.
I saw the Arundel, or I saw the auto fire coverage on TV, and it looked pretty tough to fight. So that's another prompt for my question, that as long as that stuff is out there, it could require a major effort to fight it. And I'm wondering what preparations are being made to mount that effort if it should ever need to happen.
You know, it's basically a response when needed. Trying to manage this aggressively invasive species is so difficult and environmentally harmful, but they do manage those. And the true test was that auto fire, because that was probably 40 to 50 mile an hour Santa Ana event. And they handled it quite well. It went on for a couple of days, but I watch them from my house all the time. I listen on my little radio, and also on watch duty. They're difficult. I've been on probably 50 of them, and they require resources, but that's how they're managed.
Watch Duty is a really, really great app. Definitely recommend everyone getting it. We have about 4 minutes left. Just to bring it back to the topic, does anybody have any last questions for Ian before we end for today, or even questions for me? But first, Ian, and then we'll go any questions for Firewise program. Okay, then Ian, thank you so much for giving us the presentation and answering all our questions. I think it was a fantastic presentation. I always appreciate hearing from you. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good weekend as well.
Thanks, you too. I appreciate the invitation and I appreciate the conversation with you all.
Awesome. And then any questions on Firewise specific? Anyone has any questions on the funding that's coming up? Maria, go ahead.
2 quick questions. One, in one of your emails, there was a link to a contractor list. It
Right.
comes up as error page not found. Maybe other people have seen that, and I'm going to set up an appointment and probably ask you about that as well, but I think that's something that would really help people.
That is a great one. I'm going to share my screen and teach you how to actually get there yourself. And then if you have any questions, you can also reach out to me. And I can send you the direct link. But essentially, you're just going to go to the California Fire Safe Council. Let's see if I can find this right now. You're right, that was a dead link. I'm so sorry about that. And then you're just going to go, once you're in CaliforniaFireSafeCouncil.org, just find Fire Safe Vendor List is at the top. You're going to click Get the List. And this is where you can get a list of vendors. This is all throughout California, and vendors did have to pay to be on this list, so they're not like fully vetted. So I'd still recommend vetting your own vendors, but you'll just download the list right here.
Sure.
Great,
That's
great
really helpful. Thank you. The other question, I know we're running out of time, but really quick, since on one of the videos, I don't know if this is the last call that I missed, but Rob was the CDI liaison guy, and we actually have a homeowners meeting Monday evening with a farmer's insurance agent coming on, and I just want to be prepared with some of my questions, one of which is, where do we get the CAL FIRE map that insurance companies use to redline us?
Right, great question. Unfortunately for insurance companies, they use a ton of other maps, and so they don't release those maps to us. So I'm not sure what maps they're particularly using. If you're wondering though, for the CAL FIRE maps, which I think you did mention CAL FIRE, they use a bunch of maps, not really the CAL FIRE maps. But for CAL FIRE maps, let me just double check and send the link in the chat actually, because it is sometimes tricky to find for some reason, even when you're Googling it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the link, and it's going to be in the chat for you, Maria.
Okay, great, great.
That map is what you can click to find your address and find out where you are in the fire hazard severity zone according to the fire department and CAL FIRE. It'll also inform, if regulations pass potentially in January, whether you have to abide by any Zone 0 laws and regulations.
Okay. And I know that in one of the presentations, there's a bunch of contact numbers, but it seemed to be like for, you know, issues of having been rejected or something. Is there somebody replacing Rob in Ventura or at the Fire Safety Council, or not yet? I get it.
Great question. Real quick, it is 2 p.m. So if anybody needs to leave, thank you so much for attending, and I really appreciate it. I'll stay after to answer any questions, but thank you all for attending. I always appreciate your attendance and participation. Okay, Maria, yes, there is somebody replacing Rob, and I know the contact of the person who knows who's replacing Rob, but I don't know who replaced Rob. So I can get you that contact if you want it. It'll be, I think her name's Tanya. But if you want it, just let me know, and I'll email you that contact so you can get a representation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any last questions? Okay, cool. Then happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for attending, and I hope it was beneficial. Bye, everyone. Have a great Friday.